Hello there, adventurers, and welcome to Wally DM. Today we're going to take a look at a character build that is going to be designed for combat, but have magic support. Now, a lot of folks call this a Battle Mage or a Gish type build, and we're going to advance this character today all the way up to level 12. We're going to take levels in Fighter and levels in Sorcerer. So I have a lot of stuff to cover, and as always, I will try to explain everything that I pick and go over all of the options. Let's go ahead and jump right into our level 1 character. I'd like to introduce you to Belrich Darkward, my Halfling Battle Mage. So here we are with our first level character, Belrich Darkward. Now I like to go over all of the options and why I explain them, so let's dive right in. We're going to start with our ability scores. Now, I did use the ability score increase options that you can find in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything because I wanted to put that +2 and +1 wherever I chose, and I chose Strength and Constitution. So both our Strength and Constitution are at 16. Again, we're going to be a Strength build melee fighter, so that is definitely the most important. And I also want to have a lot of hit points, so I decided to go with the 16 in Con so we can get that +3. Now we do have to have a minimum of 13 charisma in order to multi-class into sorcerer, so that's taken care of. And then the dexterity of 12 I thought was important to give us a little bit of extra initiative and to help us just a little bit in stealth because we kind of lack in that. And then a 10 in wisdom and an 8 for our dump stat in intelligence. As far as our skills are concerned, I took the soldier background, so we get 2 from there and 2 from our fighter class. I ended up with athletics because again, we're a strength build, so that makes the most sense. Intimidation, because I think it's funny that this little stout halfling is going to be intimidating and menacing. Perception, because that's probably one of the best skills in D&D, and then I chose stealth. Now, we are going to have a disadvantage of stealth throughout our entire little halfling fighter career because we're going to wear heavy armor, but with being proficient in it, it's going to help us get at least a +3 at first level, and maybe we can work on increasing that as levels go on, because there are times that as a group we're going to want to be stealthy, and we don't want to be the one that always gives us away. Now, usually I will pick races with dark vision, but this time I decided to go with the halfling. Now, don't worry, we are going to get dark vision, and we'll get that as soon as second level, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But some of the benefits of being a halfling, one of the most important is the lucky feature. When we roll a 1 on a d20 for an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, we can re-roll that die, but we must use a new roll. Now, we are going to be swinging a lot, we're going to be getting extra attacks, we're going to be using our d20 a lot, so having the lucky feature from the halfling is going to pay big dividends. Now, the next thing I thought was cute about the halfling is its halfling nimbleness. We can move through the space of any creature that is a size larger than we are. We are size small, so that includes medium, large, or larger creatures, and I can just envision this character sliding under the legs of a monster to get a different view or a different angle on an attack. And to round out our halfling abilities, we have Brave, which gives us advantage on saving throws against being frightened, and we have Stout Resilience, which gives us advantage on saving throws against poison, and even gives us some resistance to poison damage. Now, with regards to our hit points, we have 13, again courtesy of that Constitution modifier. We also have a 19 armor class that's going to tie into our fighting style, which we'll get to in just a second, and we're wearing a chainmail and using a shield. Now, we are going to drop the shield for a little bit, and that's going to happen when we become a spellcaster because we're going to need that one free hand. Now, as far as our weapons are concerned, I picked the longsword because we can use that either one-handed or two-handed, and at first level we're going to be using it one-handed because we have a shield, but once we throw that shield on our back, we want to have that extra hand open for to be able to cast spells. But I could also see if we're not going to cast spells that we could just take it from one hand, put that second hand on, and go in for our two-handed longsword attack. Now, with regards to our fighter, we do get 2 abilities at first level. The first is our fighting style. Now, I have chosen defense. That means when we are wearing armor, we get a +1 bonus to armor class, which helps us get to 19. Our second ability we get at first level for a fighter is Second Wind, and we can use this as a bonus action once per day, and when we do, we can regain 1d10 plus our level worth of hit points. Since we're going to be in a lot of combat and melee fighting, this is going to be nice to give us just a little bit of juice and extra hit points when we start taking some hits. So that's our basic setup for our first level Battle Mage. Let's jump into a character level 2 and take our first dip into Sorcerer. So here we are, we're now level 2 character. We have 1 level in fighter and 1 level in sorcerer. Now when you become a sorcerer, you choose right away your sorcerer origin, and I've chosen shadow magic. Now there's 2 reasons that I've chose this. The first one, and most important to me, is because I love dark vision, and since halflings don't have it, I'm going to obtain this ability through Eyes of the Dark. Starting at first level, or our first level of sorcerer, we're going to have dark vision with a range of 120 feet. We also get another nice ability through this, and we'll explain that when we reach the appropriate level. Now the other ability we get as far as being a shadow sorcerer is concerned is Strength of the Grave. Starting at first level, your existence in a twilight state between life and death makes you difficult to defeat. When damage reduces you to 0 hit points, you can make a charisma saving throw, which is a DC 5 plus the damage that we've taken, and on a success we can instead drop to 1 hit point. Now we cannot use this feature if we reduce to 0 hit points by means of radiant damage or a critical hit, and we can use this feature once a day. So what this is basically saying is if we are hit while we're in combat and we drop to 0 hit points, we have a great chance of, instead of going to 0, we go to 1. And then perhaps after that we can use our second wind and rejuice and get a few more hit points. A fantastic ability for a melee-oriented battle mage. Now with regards to Belrich, he has 20 hit points at level 2, and as you can see here, I did drop the armor class to 17. Now I did that because I really like to make sure that if I'm using a spell with somatic and material components, I don't want there to be any gray area. We're going to put that shield on our back, and we've got that free hand, so we can either go two-handed with our longsword, or I can use that extra hand to cast my spells. So speaking of spells, let's take a look at what we get for being a shadow sorcerer. We get 4 cantrips and 2 first level spells. Now the first cantrip that I took is Booming Blade. So what Booming Blade is we brandish our weapon with a type of energy, and we are still taking the action to cast a spell. We're not taking the attack action. But when we cast Booming Blade, we do get to make a melee attack. Now if we hit with this melee attack, then our target or our opponent is shrouded with this type of booming energy. Now if they move within 5 feet before our next turn, then they're going to take an extra D8 of thunder damage. And of course, Booming Blade will scale for us as we advance in levels, so this is going to come in very handy, and in fact, I don't see, in our beginning levels especially, not using Booming Blade for every sword attack that we make. Now I do like to have a ranged attack, and I really didn't want to invest in a crossbow or bow, so I took this Sorcerer cantrip Chill Touch. This has a 120-foot range and can cause some necrotic damage for us, so nice if we do need to stand back or if something is out of our reach. And then the other 2 cantrips that I took are non-combat related. The first one is Mending, because we are going to have armors, weapons, and shield. And if we somehow get those damaged, we're going to be able to use our Mending cantrip to hopefully put them back together. And then the 4th cantrip that I took is Message. And it's just one of my favorite spells that I like. And being a combat-oriented halfling, perhaps we need to message someone and let them know what's up ahead. Now with regards to our spells, we get 2 first level spells, and I'm going to pick both of these as reaction spells, so we can use these that when it's not our turn. And the first one we're going to take a look at is Absorb Elements. If we're hit by some type of an attack that has fire, cold, acid, lightning, or thunder damage, then we become resistant to that until the beginning of our next turn, and then we can take that energy and get an extra d6 of it on our next attack. So let's say someone hits us with an acid splash or a firebolt and we take damage from that, then that damage is cut in half. But not only that, but when we go to make our next attack on our turn, then we can add a d6 of whatever that was. So if we're hit by the acid splash, then our weapon will do an extra d6 of acid damage. And what's cool about Absorb Elements is that resistance does last until the beginning of our next turn. So if we have several enemies that have fire or whatnot, then we're only going to take half damage from that until our next turn. Now the other reaction spell that I took is Shield, and this one's very important. This gives us a +5 to our armor class until the beginning of our next turn. So we can decide to cast this after we know that we're hit. So if the creature hits us and we're sitting at armor class 17, we can use our reaction to cast shield, and then our armor class becomes a 22, and hopefully that's enough to make them miss. So that's all I have for our level 2 character. Let's take another level in fighter and move on to level 3. So here we are. Belrich Darkward is now a 3rd level character. He has 2 levels in fighter and 1 level in sorcerer. Now our next fighter ability that we get is Action Surge. Starting at 2nd level, we can push ourselves beyond our normal limits for a moment. On your turn, you can take an additional action. Now this does include if we're using Booming Blade, so if we're casting our Booming Blade spell to get that melee attack, then we can use our Action Surge to get another Booming Blade melee attack. If we want to make 2 attacks, we can do that. If we want to make an attack and a spell, if we want to make an attack and a dash, we can do that as well. Now we get our Action Surge once every short rest, so maybe we get 2 short rests per session or whatnot. We should be able to use this at least 1 or 2 times a day. Now that's all I have for you for this level. Let's jump up to level 4 character, and we're going to get our fighter archetype as our level 3 Dippin' Fighter. So Belrich Darkward is now 4th level character. We're taking our 3rd level fighter, which means we get to choose our fighter archetype, and I have chosen Battlesmith. So if you're not familiar with Battlesmith, we get 2 abilities. The first one is we get to choose Artisan's tools of our choice. It doesn't really matter. I think I chose Cartographer's tools. You can pick whatever you want. It's not really relevant to this character build. Now the second thing is we get 4 superiority dice. Now what this is superiority dice are D8s that we can use to fuel maneuvers. Now our superiority dice are refilled after a short or long rest, so that is really good. That means we're going to have lots of options in combat, so whether we're casting spells or using our battle maneuvers, we're always going to be adding a little extra something every turn in combat. Now if there is a saving throw that is dependent on our superiority dice or using our battle maneuvers, it's going to be 8 plus a proficiency bonus plus our strength modifier. So currently at our level 4 character, it is going to be 8 plus 2, which is 10, and our strength modifier is going to be 13. Now we get to pick 3 maneuvers. The first is going to be pushing attack. What this does is if we hit a target with our weapon attack, then we can expend a superiority die and we get to add that D8 to the damage. But in addition to that, then the DM needs to make a strength saving throw for that creature, and if they fail, they are pushed 15 feet away from us. So this is going to bring us back to why I chose Booming Blade as our cantrip. So instead of taking the attack action, if we use our action to cast a spell, being Booming Blade, and we hit with our Booming Blade, and then shove this creature, expend a superiority die to shove this creature 15 back, then they are no longer in melee combat with us. And if they want to come back in and be in melee combat with us, they're going to need to move that 15 feet back, and that's going to trigger Booming Blade to do an extra D8. So we get our weapon attack, we get the D8 from the superiority die, and if the creature moves, another D8 of damage. So you can kind of see where we're going with this build. Now the second maneuver that I thought would be very handy is ambush. We can expend a superiority die, again roll that d8, and we can add that to a stealth check. Again, we have disadvantage on our stealth rolls, but we are proficient, so we already have a +3. Now we can roll an additional d8 to add to that. We don't want to be that one that has the clanking armor and everyone else is sneaky and sneaks past the guards except for our stout halfling. This will hopefully help that and a fun out of combat use of that superiority die. But now, of course, if we want to make sure that we get high in the initiative, we can also expend it to add to our initiative roll, which might be something we do in later levels, especially if we want to be one of the ones that attack first. And we'll probably want to do that the higher we get in levels. Now the third battle maneuver that I chose is Feinting Attack. Now this one actually does use a bonus action, and what it is we act like we're going to swing our sword one way, but we actually swing it the other way. So we're trying to fake them out and catch them off guard. Now by using this, it has to be a creature that is within 5 feet of us, so probably someone we are already in melee combat with, and when we use this we get advantage on our attack. If we hit with that attack, then we get to add a d8, that d8 superiority die, to our damage roll. So I really like all 3 of these maneuvers, and since we get 4 superiority die every short rest, I feel like we're always going to have options in combat. Now, keeping all of this in mind, at these early levels, we're still using our longsword with 2 hands, and I feel that it's fair to tell the Dungeon Master that when we end our turn, we take that 1 hand off of our longsword, just in case we need to have that free hand to cast shield or absorb elements. But of course, that'll be up to the Dungeon Master, and I would probably ask them in advance how they would run that in their game. So that's all I have for you for our level 4 character. Let's jump up to our level 5 character, take another dip into fighter, and get our first feat. So Belrich Darkward, our Battle Mage Halfling, is now a 5th level character. We have 4 levels in Battle Mage Fighter and 1 level in Shadow Sorcerer. Now we have 47 hit points, and as you can see, our armor class is now a 20. So I took the liberty of assuming that we have 200 gold pieces to buy a Splint Mail, so we are now upgrading from Chain to Splint, which gives us 1 better armor class, and we're also putting our shield back on. And that is because we have the Warcaster feat. Now with the Warcaster feat, that's going to do a lot of things for us. The first, we need to make sure that we have the prerequisite of being able to cast at least 1 spell, which we've accomplished by multi-classing into Sorcerer. Now the abilities we get from the Warcaster feat, the first one, you have advantage on Constitution saving throws that you make to maintain your concentration on a spell when you take damage. Now this isn't as important at the moment, but as we advance in levels, we are going to have some spells that require concentration, so now we have advantage to make those Constitution checks if we get hit, and chances are we'll probably make it. But you also take into the account that a fighter is proficient in Constitution saving throws. We now have a +6 to make those. So being able to roll 2 d20s and adding +6, chances are we're going to maintain our concentration. The second is we can now perform the somatic components of spells even when we have weapons or shields in 1 or both hands. Again, we're carrying our shield and our longsword, so now any spell with somatic or verbal components is fine. We don't need the free hand to be able to cast them. And then the final feature of the Warcaster feat is when a hostile creature's movement provokes an opportunity attack, we can use our reaction to cast a spell at that creature rather than making that opportunity attack. And with the Warcaster feat and that opportunity attack, we can cast our Booming Blade cantrip. Now, if you remember, this is a spell, but we get a melee attack with that spell. And at 5th level, doesn't matter that we're multi-class with Fighter level 4, Sorcerer level 1, just 5th level altogether. Our Booming Blade is going to do an extra d8 of thunder damage. So if we get that opportunity attack, we swing and hit with our longsword, we roll our longsword damage, we roll a d8 of thunder damage, and the target is shrouded in booming energy. Now if they keep moving away from us and they move another 5 feet, instead of 1d8 at 5th level, they're going to take 2d8 of thunder damage. So Booming Blade is excellent for an opportunity attack using our reaction, but actually it's just very, very good in combat in general. The Warcaster feat is going to be an absolute must for this type of a build. So that's all I have for you for level 5. Let's advance up and take another level of fighter and move our character up to level 6. So Belrich Darkward is now a level 6 character. He has 5 levels in Fighter and 1 level in Sorcerer. We now have 56 hit points, and our proficiency bonus is a +3. Now our attack with our longsword gets a +6 modifier to that, so that is also nice. Now the only thing that we get at this level is we get our extra attack. Now what this ability states that if we use the attack action on our turn, then we can attack twice instead of once. Now let's keep in mind that prior to this we were using the cantrip Booming Blade to cast a spell and then using the melee attack as part of that spell. This will not work with extra attack. So if you use the Booming Blade trick, you're only going to get that one action. So with this we're going to not cast Booming Blade, and this is probably where we'll rely more on our superiority dice and our Battle Master maneuvers. However, what you could do is you could use your extra attack, so you swing once, swing again, and then you could use your action surge to get your Booming Blade. That's it for our level 6 character. Let's level up to level 7 and start taking some levels in Sorcerer. So Belrich Darkward is now a level 7 character. We have 5 levels in Fighter and 2 levels in Sorcerer. Now at this level, we do get to pick up an additional first level spell, and I decided to keep going with the reaction spells. So I've chosen Featherfall. Now Featherfall is great if you fall off a building or if you willingly jump off of one. Perhaps an evil DM has a pit trap or something like that that you're going to fall in. Being able to use a reaction to slow the rate of falling not only for yourself, but up to 5 of your friends or allies is going to come in handy more times than you would like to think. Now the next ability we get at this level is Font of Magic, which is going to give us our first 2 sorcery points, and we can convert those sorcery points into a spell slot. So basically what Font of Magic is going to do at this level is going to give us 1 additional first level spell slot, which is going to be great because I'm sure we're going to be using Shield, Absorb Elements, and hopefully not, but we could be Featherfall quite a few times. So having that 1 extra spell slot is going to come in handy. That's it for our level 7 multi-class character. Now let's advance up to level 8, take another level in Sorcerer, and get our first Metagmagic options. So Belrich is now a level 8 character. We have 5 levels in Fighter and 3 levels in Sorcerer. Now this is the goal where we want to reach for our Battle Mage. I feel that everything is coming together at this level, and I feel that we are fully optimized as to what we want to do. We have all kinds of options that we can do, and we can mix our magic with our fighting and our combat, and we're going to be extremely effective. So let's take a look at all the pieces that are finally coming together. The first is we're going to pop back open to the Shadow Magic and the Eyes of the Dark. If you remember, we received this ability at 2nd level, which was our first dip into Sorcerer, where we received our Dark Vision, but now we also get the ability to cast the Darkness spell. Now this does not count as a spell known for our Sorcerer count table, so that's very good, but we can cast this spell using 2 sorcery points, and if we do, we can see through this magical darkness that we cast. Now if you were to cast the darkness spell normally, you're not going to be able to see through it with dark vision, but using those 2 sorcery points, then we have the ability to do so. Now, why darkness is so important is we can use our sorcery points and cast that on our longsword, being able to see through the darkness and then charge into battle. Now, anyone that we're in hand-to-hand combat with is going to have disadvantage on their attack rolls because of the darkness and not being able to see. But we're going to be able to see just fine, and combat is going to favor us considerably. Now do keep in mind this also takes concentration, so this is where the War Magic feat comes in handy. If for some reason we are hit, then we have advantage on that con check to make sure we keep concentration, plus we have our +6 modifier from our Constitution. Fantastic indeed. Now with Darkness being a 2nd level spell, we also get a 2nd level spell slot, and I have chosen Mirror Image. And what this basically does is we get 3 duplicates of ourselves, and they have their own separate armor class that is equal to 10 plus our dex modifier. So they have a armor class of 11. Now whenever a creature targets us with an attack, and if they hit, we roll a d20, and depending on how many mirror images we have left, if we roll higher than a certain number, then that attack is actually going to hit one of our mirror images and not hit us. So with this, we have a great chance of completely nullifying attacks against us. It could, instead of hit us, it hits one of our duplicates or our mirror images, it disappears, and we're just fine. A great spell to have. Now as a 3rd level sorcerer, we get Metagmagic, which is the ability to twist our spells to give them extra special abilities. Now we have 3 sorcery points that we can use at this level, and let's take a look at the Metagmagic options that we can do, including those sorcery points. The first one is a Quickened spell, which says when you cast a spell that has a casting time of 1 action, we can spend 2 sorcery points to change the casting time from 1 action to a bonus action. Now where this is going to come in handy, and you can start seeing the pieces come together, is when it's at the beginning of combat, we can use our 2 sorcery points to quicken our mirror image. And now using a bonus action for that, we can run into battle, we quicken and have the extra 3 copies of ourselves to absorb some of the hits, and we still have our 2 attacks. We didn't waste our action casting this spell. And the second Metagmagic I chose is Subtle Spell, which allows us to spend 1 sorcery point to cast a spell without using its somatic or verbal components. Now, especially with the verbal components, we can use this to make sure that no one sees us casting a spell because we're not waving our hands around or speaking. We can use this if we are in an area that is silent, or if we have been deafened, or if we are tied up and bound and gagged and unable to cast a spell. We can still do so by expending 1 sorcery point and using our Subtle Spell feature. So that's going to do it for our level 8 character. Let's advance up to level 9 and take another level in Sorcerer. So Belrich Dark Ward is now a level 9 character, 5 levels in Fighter, 4 levels in Sorcerer, and at 4th level I am choosing a feat, and I have chosen from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything the Fate Touch feat. And what this does is it gives us a +1 to our Charisma, so we are now at a 14 or a +2, and we also learn the Misty Step spell plus an additional spell. Now I have chosen Bless as far as that goes because we can use the Quickened feature to be able to get that bless out at the beginning of combat for ourselves and a few others, and that actually gives us a d4 added to our attack rolls, which is very nice. And Misty Step is one of my favorite all-time spells where we can use a bonus action to be able to move 30 feet by teleportation, and again being able to use our subtle metamagic if we need to be able to Misty Step if we're in an area where we are unable to use our verbal components is going to be very handy. So again, these are two of my favorite spells, and being able to get the Fate Touch feat and have both of them is fantastic. Now, not only do we get to cast each of these spells once per long rest, but they're also added to the spells that we know, so if we want to use some of our spell slots to cast them, we can absolutely do so. Now we're also able to add an additional cantrip. I picked Minor Illusion. It really has no relevance here, but I thought it'd be fun to play around with in something a little bit different that's not combat oriented. And the additional 2nd level spell that I chose for this level is Blur. So with Blur, we could use our Action Surge, or we could quicken it with our Metamagic, but as we go into combat, our body becomes this blurry shape, and any creature that is trying to attack us is going to have disadvantage on those attacks against us. Now this is a concentration spell, so it is a good thing that we have the War Magic feat and that we have a +7 modifier to our Constitution saving throws or our Constitution checks in order to check to see if we lose concentration or not. So a lot of fun with the spells, and everything is still just coming together, and a nice lot of utility features to make this character very, very efficient. That's all I have for level 9. Let's take a look and see what happens at level 10. So Belrich Dark Ward is now a 10th level character. He has 5 levels in Fighter and 5 levels in Sorcerer. Now, one of the cool things about Tasha's Cauldron of Everything is it actually gives us a new 5th level ability as far as the Sorcerer goes, and this is called Magical Guidance. We can tap into our inner wellspring of magic to try to conjure success from failure. When you make an ability check that fails, we can spend 1 sorcery point to re-roll the d20, and we must use the new roll, potentially turning the failure into a success. So giving a dire situation and we have these sorcery points available and we absolutely need to succeed on a d20 roll, our Magical Guidance should come in quite handy. Now at this level we get our first 3rd level spell, and with that I chose Counterspell. I feel that there's a few different ways this could play out. Perhaps a character or an NPC or a monster sees Belrich as one of the main threats and tries to do something to manipulate his mind or something to incapacitate him, then I feel that Counterspell could come in handy there. Or perhaps a big fireball is about to blast the entire party. Once again, being able to just simply use a reaction to cast Counterspell is going to be very, very efficient for us. And I really like being able to have a lot of different utilities and tools to be able to use utilizing our reaction, because we're going to spend so much time using our actions and our bonus actions on our turn. So other than that, that is going to be it for us for level 10. As you can see, our hit points is coming up to a mighty 84. We have our armor class of 20. We have a +4 proficiency bonus. Our actions, as far as our weapon is concerned, we have a +7 to hit, and our weapon does a d8 +3 of damage. So Belrich is coming along very, very nice as a battle mage. We have a few more levels to go, so let's go ahead and continue and level our character up to level 11. So Belrich is now level 11, and I decided to put that extra level into Fighter. So we are now level 6 in Fighter, and with that we get another ability score improvement. And instead of taking a feat, I thought it was wise to go ahead and put that 2 points into Strength. So we now have an 18 Strength. Now there's no abilities here, but I did take the liberty of assuming that we're going to have enough gold to be able to buy plate mail. So now our armor class is 21. Now, so that's it for our character at level 11. Let's advance him up to level 12 and take a final dip into Sorcerer. So Belrich is now a level 12 character, a full-out Gish or Battle Mage. We have 6 levels in Fighter, 6 levels in Sorcerer. Now the spell that I decided to take as far as our next level 3 Sorcerer spell is Haste. Choose a willing creature that you can see within range. Until a spell ends, the target's speed is doubled, it gains a +2 bonus to armor class, has advantage on dexterity saving throws, and it gains an additional action on each of its turn that must be used as an attack, dash, disengage, etc. So now with Haste, we could use our Metagmagic to cast it as a bonus action, and we can have 3 attacks with our fighter and still have our action surge available if we need it. Not only that, but this also helps our armor class and makes our little halfling run a lot faster. A fantastic spell to have in our arsenal. And then the final ability that our Battle Mage is going to get is the ability to summon his Hound of Ill-Omen. So at this level, we gain the ability to call forth a howling creature of darkness to harass our foes. As a bonus action, we can spend 3 sorcery points to magically summon a Hound of Ill-Omen to target one creature we can see within 120 feet of you. Now the Hound uses the direwolf statistics found in the monster manual and has the following changes. Its size medium and is a monstrosity, not a beast. It appears with a number of temporary hit points equal to half of our sorcerer level. It can move through other creatures and objects as if it were difficult terrain. It will take force damage if it stops inside of that object, however. And at the start of its turn, the Hound automatically knows its target's location, and if the target was hidden, it is no longer hidden from the Hound. So this is a fantastic little distraction that we can cast. It does use quite a few of our sorcery points, which we don't have a lot of, and I would probably say that there is another feat in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything that will give you more sorcery points, and that might be something you want to consider beyond the 12th level if you want to use features such as the Hound of Ill-Omen. Now where this really shines is if you use flanking rules in your game, so be sure to ask your Dungeon Master, and if that is allowed, then you can send your Hound of Ill-Omen to a strategic point and get advantage on your attacks by setting up a flanking situation. But the Hound of Ill-Omen is a lot of fun and a great addition to our Shadow Sorcerer side of our character. So what did you think of our Battle Mage build? This is a lot of fun, a little halfling with this plate mail and charging into battle. 6 levels of fighter, 6 levels in sorcerer, and most important is we have something to do on every turn. There's never going to be a dull moment. We can add things to our attacks, we can do things with our spells, and this character is just going to be an absolute blast to play. I can't wait to play him myself. So that's all I have for you today. Be sure to leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of this character build and where you would do things differently. I'm looking forward to seeing your comments. Thank you very much for watching, and on to the next. Okay, I have one more piece of advice for you, and this came as I am getting ready to actually play this character in a game, and I stumbled upon the spell Shadow Blade. So with your Battle Mage Fighter Sorcerer, when you get to level 8 and you're able to pick up those second level Sorcerer spells, this is another option for you. So if you don't want to go with a defensive minded approach, for instance, casting Mirror Image or Darkness to be able to protect yourself and just getting in there with your sword damage, which is a D8 plus your strength modifier, you could go with a more offensive minded approach, and that is with Shadow Blade. So what Shadow Blade is, it's a bonus action, and it actually creates a sword of doom and gloom into your hand. Now this is a magical sword. It does have concentration, so again, it's not going to work with our Darkness spell or with Blur or any other spell that has concentration. But if we want to get in there and we want to cause a lot of damage, then this is a spell that we want to cast. Now, this makes this a magical sword in our hands, but it's actually a weapon. This is not a spell. This is a weapon that we can use. And so we are going to be able to add our strength modifier and our proficiency bonus to the attack and our strength modifier to the damage. And when we deal damage with our Shadow Blade, it's going to deal 2d8 of psychic damage. And this does level up too. So at higher levels, we get more damage to our Shadow Blade weapon. So again, I stumbled upon this after I recorded this video, and I felt that I just had to put this extra part in there because this is really, really fun, and it is so good. And if you have a high armor class to begin with, then you're not going to have to worry so much about having blur or darkness, and you just cast your Shadow Blade. You go in there, you're doing 2d8 psychic damage plus your strength modifier. You get that on both of your attacks, and I think this is a fantastic spell for a battle mage, and absolutely something that you need to look into. Thanks for watching.